How is it possible for an agency to make $3 million in just 90 days? Well, not too long ago, I helped an agency do just that. We made 4 changes in one specific part of the business that allowed for them to be able to secure, in just 90 days, $3 million in signed agreements. But how did we do it? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the 4 changes that we made to transform this agency. And in the end, I'm going to show you how you can make these changes yourself, no matter what size agency you are right now. But before we get into the exact changes that we made, I first want to explain where this agency was and what ultimately they were facing. This agency really, truly world-class designers and creatives, just epically phenomenal. They already had a reputation. They already had quite a few people looking at them because of the work that they were producing. But as where a lot of creatives find themselves, they're not really sure how to sell. They're not trained salespeople. They, even in a lot of instances, feel a little bit back-footed in the way that they are actually positioning themselves and how they go about selling. So they were not able to sell at the price point that they should be, and they also were not really able to be quite as direct in the way that they were able to communicate. This is the point in which we came up with the 4-step plan that was going to allow for them to be able to really truly soar. So let me start off with a question. If you needed to travel from San Francisco to New York City, would you just go walk out your door and jump in your car and not have anything planned and then start your drive? Or would you have it all planned out, know where you're going to sleep at night, how many hours you're going to drive every day, so that you can ultimately get there safe and sound? Well, 99% of you, I imagine, are going to take the latter. But when it comes to agencies, the vast majority of them take the former, where they just go into a sales conversation with nothing planned, nothing figured out, and have no way of being able to do this in a streamlined fashion to make sure that they get to the end goal. The first point that I want to make is that you need to have a clear goal for every single call. Caveat is that the goal isn't to make a sale, actually. It's to evaluate and to allow for your client to make the best possible decision for themselves. And how do you go about doing that in a way that doesn't actually create sales resistance? And so the vast majority of people are looking to make sales in every single conversation. But let's face it, at the initial stages of a conversation, your goal isn't to actually make a sale because you haven't prepared a proposal. Your goal is to inspire them enough to get into the next conversation with you. Even there, you want to make sure that what it is that you're doing is being truly authentic. And so I'm going to walk you through one example of an open conversation where I'm setting up the conversation so that there is a clear understanding of exactly what the goals are of this call. Hey John, thank you so much for joining the call today. Just want to make sure I've got you on the calendar for about 60 minutes. I want to make sure that that still works for you. The goal for me really is quite simple today. I want to be able to get into depth of where you currently are right now, where you're really wanting to go, and the challenges that you are ultimately facing. My objective is to provide you with as much value as possible in this conversation. I like to treat these calls as if you're a paying client, and it allows for us to be able to, one, get to know each other. It allows for you to be able to evaluate whether we might be the right potential partner and be able to start to explore whether we can ultimately help you. Does that sound good? Great. So the final piece that I find happen very frequently is that during these conversations, we can kind of veer off track. And if that ever happens in the conversation with you, with the objective of being able to provide you with as much value as possible, I'm going to interrupt you to make sure that we push you back on track. Is that okay as well? That's the setup to the conversation that we then spend 60 minutes going through the call. Now, I did a couple of things here that are ultimately important. 1, I took control of the conversation. 2, I asked him for permission. And 3, I got him into the mood of saying yes to me, this fake John that I'm speaking to right now. And so here's the thing that's really important. There's psychological components to what I'm doing and making sure that ultimately I have a clear objective for him of what it is that I'm doing. The goal, again, is not to convince him of making a sale because ultimately that creates sales resistance. What I'm looking to do is actually be able to evaluate. Can I help this person? Do they have challenges that I'm able to solve for? And ultimately, do I even like this person to begin with? Having a truly mutual interview with this prospective client. But if you want to win clients consistently, you need clear goals even before you get on the call. And you can only do this if you have the correct insights. Which brings me to the second change we made for this agency. So if you are going for a job interview, there's some fairly standard things that you should be doing and prepping for beforehand, right? ultimately reading the job description, looking into the person that is going to be interviewing you, and probably should know a little bit about the company beforehand, right? Otherwise, if you don't, when you get asked, why do you want to work here? It's going to end in a very awkward silence. So this is what a lot of agencies ultimately do when they come to a sales conversation. They come unprepared. You should have a script for every single call that you actually have. Understanding the objective, where exactly are they? And again, the reminder, the objective of every call is to allow for your prospective client to make the best possible decision for themselves. The thing that ultimately they need to be able to understand is a couple of things throughout the sales conversation is, can they trust you? Are they capable of accomplishing the goal? Are you capable of accomplishing the goal? What is the risk factor in actually moving forward? And how much is it going to cost to be able to do it? Those are the things that, generally speaking, the vast majority of people need to understand before moving forward. But here's the thing that where a lot of agencies believe is that the proposal conversation is where that all happens. And you couldn't be further from the truth there. Every single conversation is a component of the evaluation. And you need to understand that it is actually a journey for the prospective buyer. They are going through evaluation criteria. And you need to have a plan of action of how you go about this conversation. And I'm not saying that you are going to throw out the script every single conversation and bring in a new one. No, you don't want to do that. You want to have largely, as close as possible, the same oriented journey to every client. That way, when you make little tweaks to your sales conversation, you know whether it had good impact or bad impact, but having a plan of the conversation that you were going to have. What kind of questions are you going to ask? What is the evaluation criteria that lets you know that you can ultimately help them? Do you need a firm budget? Do you need to be clear on their revenue? Do you need to be clear on their current KPIs? What are their objectives? What are their challenges? The thing that's really important here is that far too often we go into sales conversations looking to convince. You shouldn't do that. Trying to convince anyone of anything is a futile effort. It's very infrequent that anyone is convinced of anything. What you need to do is illuminate, educate, create more knowledge for this prospective client so that they can make the best possible decision for themselves. And the only way to really do that in a purposeful way is have a plan of action of the conversation you are going to have with this prospective client. Incredibly important that you have a script for every one of the calls that you're going to have. So these are two crucial elements of preparing for the sales call: understanding the objectives and ultimately just actually prepping for the call. But what about when it comes to your agency's positioning? Well, here's the next big change that we made to be able to blow up the sales for this agency. So imagine for a moment that you were back in school. Most of us have had both bad and good history teachers. The bad history teacher ultimately is incredibly boring, monotone, can't tell a story. Whereas the good history teacher is passionate, excited. They want to tell the story. They know it intrinsically well. This is something that they are incredibly excited to share the story with you, and ultimately makes it a whole lot more intriguing and entertaining. Here's the thing that I want to also have you think about here. Your positioning to your client, what your brand voice is. Are you knowledgeable? Are you charismatic? Like, who are you as an agency and as a person is incredibly important. The way that you engage with clients, the reason why you exist on this planet is a whole lot more important than actually trying to convince someone of anything. You think about the traditional agency model, and the traditional agency pitch is you spend loads of time trying to explain why you are that best thing since sliced bread. But if you were to actually change and flip the script and actually talk about the thing that has you jump out of bed every morning to go and do the work that you do because you're incredibly excited about it, then you're able to create a bit of alignment. Because if you want to do the same thing that they want to be able to accomplish, then ultimately they have a whole lot more comfort. It's not actually just about the money, it's actually something that you were drawn to do anyways. And it's something that you would have done with or without them, because it's something that excites you, it's something that you enjoy. It's you being that great history teacher that makes it entertaining and makes it fun. It's the exact same thing here, and you need to make sure that the way that you go about the way your agency is positioned in a sales conversation is paramount. All this is great, But it means nothing to you if you can't close a deal. And this final change was one that we made that had largely one of the biggest components of impact. So for the vast majority of you, the part of a sales conversation that you like the least is when you have to show the price. And far too often, if you have any sales recordings, I challenge you to go back and take a look. But the vast majority of the calls that I see recorded to start off with, they kind of word vomit all over the place. And very often they hear them say things like, oh, we could do things and change things if the price is too much, or we can even look at discounts. And there's like this incredible amount of nervousness that comes around to showing the price. I'm not really sure why. If you were to do this process in a meaningful way, it's gonna change the way that you engage with this piece of the conversation. So here's a couple of preludes to this that is incredibly important. You need to start off with being knowledgeable about them. You need to be able to speak their language. If in a sales conversation, you're able to articulate things and being able to point out things that are going on within their business and what they're currently facing right now, and better articulate it than they are able to articulate it right now, then they know that you know them. They know that you've done this before, which creates a whole lot of comfort in working with you in the first place. It reduces the perceived level of risk. If you do this while also being passionate about the conversation that you're having about the topic, because this is incredibly difficult to fake. So just don't even try. But if you're both passionate and knowledgeable, it creates a foundation of comfort because you're excited about it. It reduces their risk level. They know you understand them and have been there before, so ultimately can help them. And it changes the dynamic of the conversation. And so if you have collected the right amount of information, you've planned out your scripts before, now when you get to the price, the entire conversation is about what is the output, the end objective, the numerical value of this project. What does it actually look like? Either dollars and cents, increase to brand awareness, increase to conversion rates. What exactly is it that what you're doing going to have impact to the business? And when you have less nervousness around this entire conversation, you're better at making this offer. The best way, in my opinion, to be able to share an offer is to articulate exactly what the value is going to be, how the outcome of this project is going to have impact to them, and then show the price and say nothing. Let them be the first one to talk. This is often the place in a sales conversation that makes most agencies kind of run for the hills and ultimately lose the most deals. Now you know the steps that I implemented with this agency, so you can implement them in your own. Step 1 is have clear objectives for every single call. 2, have a script that ensures the right prospect journey. 3, really truly have a clear understanding of your agency's positioning. And 4, be knowledgeable and passionate in the conversation that allows for you to be able to create comfort. Here's a kind of word to the wise, if you will. The vast majority of agency owners, when I first encounter working with them, have these really big dreams of how big they want to grow. And that's great, that's phenomenal. I want to just have a call out here that this agency owner in this stage of growth had them growing faster than they were able to catch up. And it didn't create a disastrous situation for them. He was able to move along and it took a lot of support, but it was a tumultuous time. They grew very rapidly. They had to hire a whole lot of team members, and it was nearly about 4x in growth in 90 days. The vast majority of you do, generally speaking, want to grow more measured that allows for you to be able to grow. One of the biggest components to even my own journey, and I see this happen time and time again, is that in order for your business really truly to be able to thrive, you as a leader has to grow and change along with it. Recognizing that if your business grows and matures faster than you as a leader, it becomes very difficult for you to continue to manage its growth. So know that, understand that, and know that it is going to take a whole lot of work if this is the goal that you want. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I just want you to go into this conversation with your eyes wide open. So now you know about how to convert sales once they're in your funnel. However, in order to achieve these results, you're going to need to have loads of leads in your funnel. So check out this video where I explain how an agency can generate 500 plus leads a month.